Hello students, today's agenda is to check homework. We'll be doing some more coordinate proofs, but now we're going to work with the slope, and today you will be able to work on 10.9. Today students will be able to perform coordinate proofs regarding slopes of parallel and perpendicular lines. So before we start with that, here is some information. And it comes back to the formula y equals mx plus b. And for that, the m refers to the slope of the line or how inclined it is. And b is the first point that we can graph, which is the y-intercept, okay? I don't know if you remember the first point, and then you have the rise and run, okay? So in here it says, if you find the slopes of two lines, you can prove if they are parallel or perpendicular. And this is why. Parallel lines have the same slope. So you have m and m. And so in here, y equals mx plus b, remember that the m represents the slope. So if this number is the same as this one, that means that the two lines are going to be parallel. And I'm going to do a quick sketch here. This is not the point of the lesson, but so this is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's my initial point. And then it says that the slope is rise 2 and then run 1. So rise 2, run 1. If there is nothing, you just put it over 1. Okay, so that's my line that goes somewhat like that. The other one is at -3, so 1, 2, 3. That's my initial point, the y-intercept. And then my slope is rise is 2 and then run 1, so 1, 2, and then 1. And so my line goes somewhat like that. So if I extend these lines, they will never meet. For perpendicular lines, they have opposite reciprocal slopes. That means that if my slope of one is m, the other one will be negative, and then it's like having this over 1 and you switch them. That's the reciprocal. Okay, so -1 over m. So you switch the numerator and denominator. And so in here, there are two examples. You have y equals 2x plus 1. And then the other one is y equals -1/2 x minus 9. So again, this doesn't matter for whether they're perpendicular or parallel. It's just the slope that we are looking at. And so how do we know that these are reciprocal? Well, to begin with, this is positive, this is negative. That is opposite. This is 2, but since we put it as a fraction, it's 2 over 1. If we switch them, then it's going to be 1 over 2. So -1 over 2, that's the slope. And let me see if I can graph them, because I kind of did this apart a little too much. Maybe I can change it to -4. Let's do -4 instead. Again, even the -9 should work, but I'm going to change it to -4 to make a quick sketch here. Again, this is not the point of the lesson. So I'm going to graph this one first. 1, 2 over 1. So 1 is my first point. And then 2 over 1, you just go 2 up and then 1 to the right. So that's my, whoops, more or less that's my line. The other one, I'm going to put it in blue. It's at -4, so 1, 2, 3, 4, -4. And then you go down 1. And then 2 to the right, 1, 2, right there. And so my line is going to go somewhat like that. And if you notice, that's forming a 90-degree angle, which means that the lines are perpendicular. Okay, having that information will help us. Something else that you will have with perpendicular lines in relation to this one is that, again, this is repetition. They form right angles, and slopes are opposite reciprocal. So one example is 1/2, the opposite, negative, reciprocal, 2 over 1, but you don't put the 1. 8, the opposite becomes negative. The reciprocal, you put it over 1 and change the numerator and denominator. The other one, which some people get confused with, is -1 and +1. So first of all, if you have a negative, the opposite is positive. But then in here, it's like having 1 over 1. And if you switch the numerator and denominator, it's like having 1 over 1. So basically, it's just like that, okay? Those are also perpendicular lines. If the slopes are -1 and +1, they're perpendicular lines. And last but not least, when you have the slope equals 0 and the other line has the slope equals undefined, then they are also perpendicular lines. And let me show you what that means. When you were learning about the slope, you learned that positive slope is the positive line, negative slope gives you a negative line. The zero slope, it's a horizontal line, but undefined is when it goes up and down, okay? It's vertical. So if you think about it, a horizontal line with a vertical line will form a 90-degree angle. So that's why, even if these are not opposite reciprocal, we know that the zero with the undefined form 90-degree angles, so they are perpendicular lines. Okay, now that we have that clear, we're gonna start practicing some of this. So it says, prove that BC is parallel to AD. So we have this, which we've been working with, right? The variable coordinates. And so we're gonna look for the other coordinates first. So remember that this comes from going to the left. This is x, so that means that this is -a. So going on this direction, you have the same measurement, so that's going to be, but it's positive because you're going to the right, so it's going to be +a. And for the y, you're going this many units, so that represents +b because it's going up, not down. So since you're going on the same direction and the same amount of units, then that means that that's also b, +b for y. For a, to get here, I troubled -a because it's the same distance than this one. So -a, but then I don't go up or down, I just stay there, so that's gonna be 0 for y. And for d, you go +a, but then you don't go up or down, so that's 0. Now that we have the coordinates, we're gonna start working with this right here. It says BC is parallel to AD, and so that I can go a little up, I'm gonna write that down again. So line segment BC is parallel to AD, and we're proving this, okay? We have to prove that. And how do we prove that two lines are parallel to each other? Well, if they have the same slope, then that means that they are parallel. Okay, so let's see. BC is this line right here. BC is this line right here, the one in pink, from point B to point C. And so those points are -a, +b, +a, +b. And then I just start using the slope that I'm gonna show you here. You probably remember this. So these are different forms of representing the slope, and the slope is represented with m, you already know that, but it's equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And you might recall that that's the same thing as rise over run, or the change on y over the change on x. Or if you recall from previous lessons, I represented the y as a sun because the sun goes up in the morning and it goes down at night. Not literally, scientifically, not true, but and then you run to the left if it's negative, to the right if it's positive. Okay, so this is the part that we're going to be using right now to find those slopes and prove that these two lines are parallel. Okay, BC and AD. Okay, so the formula is y equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And so this is x1 and x2 x1 and y1. I'm so sorry. And that means that this is 0.1. So it's x and y for 0.1. And you have x and y for 0.2. So that's why they call it x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay? And I hope you don't get confused because of my messy here. Okay, so y2 is right here minus y1, so it's b minus b over a minus from the formula, but then x1 is negative a, so I'm going to put negative a right there. Some people like to put it with parentheses, other people don't. That's fine. Either way is fine. Now, negative times negative becomes positive, or I call it the big plus. So big that it covers the negatives and there is no more negative in between. And so, b minus b is 0. A plus a is 2a. And 0 divided by any number or value or variable or whatever is always 0. Okay, so that's my slope. What am I putting y in here? I'm so sorry. This should be m. I just showed it to you, and so it's m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so that's my slope. My slope for BC is 0. Okay, now let's look at AD. For AD, the points are, and let me use blue now. A is negative a, 0, and D is a, 0. So my slope is equals to, again, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And y2, notice how if you don't want to put the label, if you want to put the labels, you can, but if you don't want to, you can just look at it visually. The last one minus this one, so 0 minus 0. And the next one, which is a, minus negative a. Okay, now if you prefer the labels, that's fine. x1, y1, x2, y2. So y2, 0, minus y1, 0, over x2, I go over here and it's a, minus right here, x1 is negative a. So minus from here and minus from the x1, okay? Again, negative and negative becomes the big plus. And so this is 0 minus 0 is 0. A plus a is 2a, and that's equals to 0. So my slope is 0. Since they have the same slope, that means that the two lines are parallel, and that's how I prove that. Okay, the next one says, prove that AB, okay, AB is this right here, is perpendicular, that's a symbol for perpendicular to BC. BC is this line right here. I'm just going to copy the coordinates because it's the exact same figure. So AB, D is A0, and A is negative A0. Okay? And so, How do we know that two lines are perpendicular to each other? Well, we already know from here that they have to be opposite reciprocal, including the -1 and 1, those are also opposite reciprocal, or they have to be 0, undefined, okay? Okay, so let's do AB first. And so point A is -A, 0, and point B is -A, B. And so my slope is, again, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And so y2, b minus 0. And then x2 minus x1, -a from here, minus from the formula, -a from the other one. Okay, some people write a -a minus a. That's also okay. And here we have the negative and negative becomes the big plus. So b minus 0 is b. And -a plus a, it means that I owe something, but then I have that same something, or I pay that. So that becomes 0. And you can never divide by 0. The 0 cannot never be in the denominator. Why? Because let's look at something with numbers. So if I have a divided by 0, basically I'm looking for a number that multiplied times 0 gives me 8. And there is nothing that multiplied by 0 will be 8. Anything multiplied by 0 will always be 0. Okay, so there is no answer. Now related to, I guess, saying that you have eight pizzas divided by 0 people. How many pizzas does each person get? If you say 8, okay, who gets those 8 pizzas? But if you say 0, then what happens to the 8 pizzas? So that's why we call this undefined. It's not possible to solve, we can't really tell. So the answer, whenever you have a 0 as the divisor, it's going to be undefined. Okay? And I didn't leave enough space for the other one. But that's okay. Okay, for the other slope, I'm going to use BC. And so point B is -AB, and point C is AB. Again, M is equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 equals, again, b minus b over a minus, and then -a, minus from here and negative from the -a. Two negatives together always make a big plus. B take away b is 0. A plus a is 2a. And 0 divided by 2a is 0. As you can see, these are not opposite reciprocal, but we know that undefined slope with a 0 slope give me perpendicular lines. So that means that we can do this. So now you're gonna go to your assignment. It's gonna be 10, what was that? I'm sorry. 10.9, and have fun.